Hello, and welcome to TerraNash. I'm Aiden, your narrator for tonight. Let's take this time together to step away from the rush of the day and ease into a world of dreams and wonder. Find a comfortable place to sit or lie down, letting go of any tension as you settle in. Close your eyes and let your breathing slow. Inhale deeply and exhale gently, letting your body relax with each breath. With every exhale, feel yourself drift further into calmness. Tonight, I'll tell you a story called Whispers of the Skinwalkers. A tale set beneath the moonlit canyons of the Southwest, where ancient spirits stir and forgotten echoes call out through the wind. When Tala returns to her childhood home, she is drawn into a sacred mystery buried deep within her ancestry. And soon, the lines between the living and the spirit world begin to blur. But before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from, and what time is it as you settle in to hear this story? We'd also love to know what kinds of stories you'd enjoy next. Your thoughts and suggestions inspire us, so please share them in the comments below. If you'd like even more from us, you can check out our Patreon for early access to all our stories, as well as a curated Spotify playlist for peaceful nights and gentle dreams. And if you've been enjoying our bedtime stories, subscribing is a simple and free way to support us. Your support means the world to us, and together we can make TerraNash an even more peaceful place for storytelling. Now, let's take a moment to slow down. Allow your breath to settle into a gentle rhythm. Feel the weight of the day slowly lift from your shoulders. You are safe here. You are held. You are home. Let the stillness of night guide you. And when you're ready, we'll begin our story. Whispers of the Skinwalkers. Close your eyes and drift with me into the sacred quiet of Red Mesa. The wind is rising, the spirits are waiting. Let's begin. The desert wind was restless that night, threading through the canyons with a low, mournful song. In the heart of the Red Mesa reservation, the oldest living elder, Ahote, stirred from uneasy sleep. Sweat beaded his brow despite the cool night air. In his dreams, a raven with a man's face whispered in a voice not meant for mortal ears. It spoke of returning, of taking back what was once stolen. When Ahote awoke, the whisper still clung to the corners of his mind like spider silk. He stepped outside his modest adobe home and lifted his gaze to the sky. The moon, normally bright and commanding, hung low and sickly, its edges blurred by an unnatural mist. The spirits were speaking, and they were afraid. At the morning gathering, Ahote addressed the council by the sacred fire. The other elders, Chaitan, Sani, and Halona, listened in grave silence as he described the dream. A single raven was a common enough omen, but a raven bearing a human face. That was a sign of an ancient evil, the Skinwalker. Chaitan, ever the voice of calm reason, placed a hand on Ahot's shoulder and urged the council not to rush to fear. Dreams are not always prophecy, he said, voice low and steady. Perhaps old wounds have simply returned to haunt our sleep. Yet there was a flicker, barely noticeable behind Chaitan's eyes. Something too cautious, too rehearsed. The first real sign came later that day. Ranchers found their livestock mutilated. No tracks leading in or out, the wounds precise and bloodless. A dog that wandered too close to the old burial grounds returned limp and broken, its eyes glassy and white. Rumors rippled through the tight-knit community. Something had awoken. The council gathered again that evening, drawing protective circles in the dust and chanting prayers to shield the village. But the fire burned lower than it should, its flames whispering and twitching as though in pain. Meanwhile, unseen by them, in the farthest corner of the canyon where light did not reach, a second presence stirred, older, quieter, and far more patient than the angry spirit they feared. This second entity smiled in the dark, knowing the tribe's attention was already pointed in the wrong direction. A storm was coming, and this time it would not pass them by. The bus kicked up a trail of dust as it rumbled down the broken highway leading into Red Mesa. Tala sat by the window, the desert stretching endlessly on either side, cracked and barren under a sky too wide and too blue. She hadn't planned to come back, not after everything that had happened between her and the tribe. But her mother's sudden death left no choice. Her fingers curled tighter around the old envelope resting in her lap. It had arrived 2 weeks ago without a return address, written in her mother's careful hand. Come home, they whisper your name. At the time, Tala dismissed it as the ramblings of a sick woman. Now, after the second letter, the one that only contained a clump of black feathers wrapped in red thread, she couldn't ignore it any longer. When she stepped off the bus, the heat smacked her like an open palm. Waiting for her was Sunny, a younger elder with kind eyes weathered by sorrow. Tala, he said simply, opening his arms for a brief, uncertain hug. Sani, she replied, feeling oddly hollow inside. The smell of sagebrush and dry earth filled her lungs, sharp and unwelcoming. As they drove toward the village, Sani spoke in low tones about the strange happenings, the livestock deaths, the howling winds at night, the way the animals refused to go near the old ceremonial grounds. Tala listened, but skepticism prickled her mind. She had spent years away in the city, studying medicine, building a life free from whispers of spirits and curses. It's an old story, she said finally, trying to lighten the air. Bad dreams, bad luck. Nothing more. Sani gave her a long, searching look. Not everything that hides from science is make-believe, Tala. The car bumped over a dry creek bed, jostling them. Tala turned to the window again, unease growing. She could almost feel something out there, just beyond the line of dust and sage, watching. When they reached the house, Tala hesitated before going inside. The place felt wrong, too quiet, too heavy, as if the air itself grieved. Dust motes floated through the slanted sunlight, and everything smelled faintly of burned sage. Her mother's things were untouched, yet the place carried a sense of being disturbed, shifted just enough to be noticed. On her mother's nightstand, Tala found a small bundle wrapped in deerskin. Inside was a hand-carved talisman, a wolf swallowing a snake, stained dark with old blood. A faded note accompanied it. Trust no one who wears two faces. That night, Tala dreamed of the raven again. Only this time, it wasn't a raven. It was a man, his face a shifting blur of familiar features, reaching out to her with clawed hands and whispering in a voice she almost recognized. "You cannot outrun the blood that made you." Tala woke with a start, heart hammering. She could swear she heard someone moving outside her window. But when she peered through the curtains, there was nothing there. Only the whisper of the desert wind and a faint shadow disappearing into the night. In the distance, unseen by her, a figure lingered at the edge of the village. Not the twisted, violent spirit the elders feared, but a second watcher, patient and calculating, already wearing the mask of someone she thought she could trust. The sun rose heavy and red, casting long shadows over Red Mesa. The villagers moved with a cautious, clipped energy, whispering prayers under their breath as they went about their day. Word had already spread. The healer's daughter had returned. Some saw it as a sign of hope. Others, recalling old superstitions about bloodlines and omens, weren't so sure. Tala wandered the village feeling like a ghost in her own home. Familiar faces smiled tightly at her, but there was a stiffness in their bodies. A sideways glance that said more than words ever could. Children were kept indoors. Dogs whimpered at unseen things. Even the birds seemed to avoid the trees where the old sacred grounds began. She met with the council that morning around the sacred fire. Ahote, flanked by Sani and Chaitan, explained the depth of their fear. "It is a skinwalker," Ahote said bluntly. "We have seen the signs, and your return is no accident." Tala bristled. "You think I brought this with me?" Chaitan's voice was soft but insistent. "It was never about blame, child. Some blood calls things to it, whether it wishes to or not." Sani unfolded an old story, one Tala remembered vaguely from her childhood, about a powerful medicine man who, out of jealousy and hunger for power, turned to forbidden rites. Cursed to roam as a twisted creature, he could only reclaim his human form by stealing the soul of a blood relative. "And now," Sani said gravely, "he stirs again, and you may be the last thread tying him to this world." Tala shook her head, overwhelmed. Spirits, curses, bloodline legacies. It sounded ridiculous. Yet the weight in the air, the wrongness in the land, gnawed at her skepticism. After the meeting, Chaitan approached her privately. His face, usually so composed, was shadowed with concern. "Do not trust everyone who calls you kin," he said, voice low. "The spirit world is clever. It hides in what is familiar." He pressed something small into her hand. A woven bracelet of river grass and obsidian beads. "Wear this. It may not stop him, but it will help you see what others cannot." Tala tucked the bracelet away, unsure whether to feel reassured or more unnerved. Later that evening, while walking near the sacred cliffs, she heard it. Voices carried on the wind. Not words, not exactly. Just the cadence of whispers, layered and tugging at the edges of her mind. She spun around, but the desert was empty. A flutter of black feathers passed just beyond her vision. The smell of wet earth and something coppery filled her nose. Instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, she caught a glimpse. A figure, human-shaped, crouched atop a distant ridge, watching, shifting. But when she blinked, it was gone, leaving only the lingering whisper, "You belong to us." Terrified but unwilling to show it, Tala hurried back toward the village. As she crossed the dusty fields, she saw Chaitan again, standing beneath the gnarled tree that marked the boundary of the sacred land. He raised a hand in greeting. For a split second, Tala thought she saw something ripple across his face, like an old canvas being stretched too tight, a flicker of something inhuman beneath the surface. She shook her head, trying to clear it. The stress was getting to her. It had to be. Behind her, the whispering wind grew louder, almost laughing, and somewhere deep within the earth, something ancient and patient stirred again. Not the reckless beast they hunted, but a colder, smarter force. One who had waited generations for the perfect moment to strike. The night of the spirit trials arrived heavy with a strange pressure in the air, as if the stars themselves leaned closer to the earth to watch. In the heart of Red Mesa, the villagers gathered in a wide circle around the ceremonial fire, the flames casting flickering shadows that danced like spirits of the old world. Tala stood at the center, feeling exposed beneath their gazes. She wore a simple white tunic, her hair unbound, a charm of river grass and obsidian beads tied around her wrist. Chaitan's gift. Sani approached her with a bundle of sage and cedar wood, murmuring prayers as he smudged the smoke over her. "You seek answers," he said quietly, "but remember, the spirit world offers only glimpses. It is we who must piece the truth together." Tala swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded. She knelt before the fire as the drums began, low and steady like a heartbeat. The villagers' chanting grew louder, swirling around her, pulling her down into a place between waking and dreams. The world shifted. The fire's crackle faded into silence. Tala opened her eyes to find herself standing on a vast plain of white sand under a bruised purple sky. There were no stars, only a sickle moon hanging low and close. From the distance, a figure approached, a great silver wolf with eyes like molten gold. It circled her once, then sat back on its haunches, speaking in a voice that was neither male nor female, but something older than either. "Two roads lie before you," the wolf said. "One leads through fire, one leads through shadow. Both wound, both heal, but only one binds your soul to ruin." Tala tried to ask for clarity, but the wolf only tilted its head. "The enemy wears the face you love most," it said, as its form began to flicker and split. First into two wolves, then into two shifting, overlapping shadows. Suddenly, the sky cracked open with a sound like breaking stone. From the rupture fell a rain of black feathers, staining the white sand like spilled ink. Out of the darkness, two figures emerged. Both wore the faces of people she knew. The first was Kiona, her childhood friend, smiling with tears in her eyes. The second was Chaitan, the elder who had been guiding her, standing silently with hands folded in calm patience. Both reached for her. Both called her name. Tala stood frozen, heart pounding, as the feathers swirled around her feet. The wolf's voice whispered once more into her ear, fading like a dying breath. "Choose wrongly, and you will never wake." With a gasp, Tala snapped back to the waking world. The fire still burned before her, and the villagers' chanting had slowed to a low hum. Sweat slicked her skin, and her hands trembled uncontrollably. Sani leaned over her, concerned. "What did you see, child?" he asked. Tala hesitated. How could she tell them what she had witnessed without sounding mad? Two familiar faces, two possible betrayals. One hidden enemy still cloaked in trust. I saw danger," she said carefully. "Closer than we think." The council exchanged dark glances. The ceremony ended, and the villagers dispersed, muttering prayers as they returned to their homes. Tala stood alone by the dying fire, her heart heavy with new fear. Behind her, in the darkness, someone watched her, smiling, waiting. Not the savage skinwalker the tribe feared, but the second, the quiet one, the one who already stood inside the circle of their trust. And the wind carried a whisper, not from the spirit world, but from something colder and hungrier. She is almost ready. The days after the spirit trials grew brittle and tense. The villagers walked with their eyes lowered, speaking only in hushed tones, while the children were kept indoors, away from the hungry winds that stirred without warning across the desert floor. Even the animals seemed to sense it. Dogs barked at nothing, and the horses refused to cross certain parts of the village. Tala threw herself into the old rhythms of life, helping repair the sacred grounds and tending to the communal gardens. Yet everywhere she turned, she felt the invisible fingers of fear tightening around her. Worse still, strange accidents began to plague the tribe. A hunter was found dead at the base of Spirit Ridge, his body shattered as if thrown from a great height. A well that had run pure for generations suddenly turned foul and stagnant overnight. Crops withered under a cloudless sky. The tribe whispered of curses, of the old evil stirring once more. Tala tried to make sense of it all, but she found herself doubting even those closest to her. Kiona, her childhood friend, was everywhere, helping with the gardens, tending to the sick, patching roofs. Yet her presence began to feel almost too constant, too eager. She brushed aside Tala's concerns with a bright smile, urging her to attend the festival of renewal approaching in 2 nights. "It will bring hope back to the people," Kiona said, pressing a sprig of white sage into Tala's hand. Her fingers trembled slightly as she did. Later, Tala visited Chaitan for guidance. The old man was seated outside his home, carving something from bone. He looked up with a slow, warm smile, but again, just for a heartbeat, Tala caught that flicker, a stretching, a tightness behind the skin. Was it her imagination, or was the spirit world showing her what others could not see? "Doubt is a poison," Chaitan told her gently as he worked. "Trust those who have always walked beside you." Yet the wolf's warning from her vision echoed louder than ever. The enemy wears the face you love most. That night, Tala sat awake by her window, unable to sleep. The moon was a thin, broken smile in the sky, and the desert air felt wrong, charged with a static that made her skin prickle. She heard footsteps outside, soft, deliberate. Tala tensed, reaching for the small knife hidden under her pillow. She crept to the window and peered out, just in time to see a shadow slip between the houses, moving faster than anything human had a right to move. Heart hammering, Tala followed. She moved silently, her feet barely stirring the sand. The shadow led her toward the old burial grounds, where the sacred stones stood like crooked teeth against the horizon. And there, in the moonlight, she saw it. Kiona kneeling by the stones, whispering in a language Tala didn't recognize, her hands stained red with something that looked like blood. Tala gasped, and Kiona's head snapped around, her eyes shining silver for a terrible instant before returning to normal. "Tala," Kiona called out, her voice cracking. "It's not what it looks like." Tala backed away, dread blooming in her chest. She turned and ran, the cold laughter of the desert wind chasing her heels. Behind her, unseen and unnoticed, a second figure watched from atop the cliff edge. Chaitan, or something wearing his face, hands folded, smiling faintly. The villagers had been so focused on the wolf they could see. They hadn't noticed the serpent curled quietly at their feet. Morning broke in a blood-red sky, and the village stirred uneasily. Word traveled fast. Tala had returned late, pale and shaken, refusing to explain where she had been. The council called an emergency meeting at the sacred fire, the smoke curling into uneasy shapes against the hard light of day. Tala stood before them, the events of the night still raw in her mind. She told them what she had seen: Kiona at the burial grounds, whispering strange words, her hands soaked in blood. A collective gasp rippled through the gathered villagers. Some crossed themselves, others turned their faces away in grief. Kiona was brought forth. She stood trembling before the council, barefoot, her hair wild from the night. Tears streamed down her face as she denied it. "I was trying to protect us," she pleaded. "I was trying to call for help, to strengthen the walls between the worlds." The elders debated fiercely. Some believed her, arguing that desperate times called for desperate acts. Others, like Sani and Ahote, saw the signs too clearly. The trembling hands, the hollow look in her eyes, the smell of wrongness clinging to her. Tala's heart twisted painfully as she watched Kiona sob and beg. She wanted to believe her. Part of her still saw the girl who had once climbed trees with her and shared whispered secrets under starry skies. But the wolf's warning gnawed at her. The enemy wears the face you love most. Finally, Ahote called for a trial by spirit flame, an ancient rite that could reveal possession. Risky, dangerous, but it was the only way. The villagers gathered under the twilight sky. A circle of salt and ash was drawn, and Kiona was led to its center. The spirit fire was lit, blue and green flames leaping into the dark, casting grotesque shadows across the stone walls. the ceremony began. The elders chanted the old songs, their voices low and steady. The flames danced higher, and the air thickened until Tala could barely breathe. At first, nothing happened. Kiona wept and pleaded, looking so heartbreakingly human that doubt flickered in Tala's chest. But then the fire turned black. The chanting faltered as the smoke thickened and twisted into writhing shapes. Kiona's body jerked unnaturally, her face contorting, her mouth opening in a voiceless scream. Her eyes snapped open, no longer brown, but gleaming silver. A great howl tore from her throat, not human, not animal, but something terrible and old. The spirit of the skinwalker had been riding her all along. The elders sprang into action. Chaitan moved faster than anyone, chanting in a tongue that scratched at Tala's ears like thorns. They forced the spirit from Kiona's body, driving it back into the darkness with sacred salt and burning sage. When it was over, Kiona collapsed into Sunny's arms, unconscious but breathing. The spirit, the first skinwalker, had been exorcised, driven away for now. The tribe exhaled as one. Relief swept through the gathered villagers. The enemy was gone. The danger had passed, or so they thought. Tala should have felt victorious, should have felt safe, but a heavy knot of unease coiled in her gut, because deep in her bones, she knew it wasn't over. The skinwalker they had cast out was wild and reckless, but there was another, a colder, smarter force, one that hadn't needed to possess anyone to get close, one that had simply walked among them all along, wearing trust like a second skin. And as the villagers celebrated around the dying fire, Tala caught Chaitan watching her across the flames, smiling, so faintly that she almost thought she imagined it. Almost. The celebrations stretched into the night, though they were quieter than in years past. Music and laughter echoed through the village, a brittle kind of joy born more from exhaustion than true relief. Children played around the fires, and the elders offered prayers of thanks to the spirits for delivering them from the evil that had plagued them. But Tala stayed apart, sitting alone beneath the twisted juniper tree at the edge of the gathering, her thoughts heavy and tangled. The wind felt colder now, more knowing. The wolf's warning haunted her still. The road of fire, the road of shadow, the face she loved most. Her skin prickled when she felt a presence approaching. She turned to find Sani standing beside her, holding something wrapped carefully in faded deer hide. "Your mother left this for you," he said gently, placing the bundle in her lap. She knew this day would come. Tala's hands trembled as she unwrapped it. Inside was an old, cracked journal, the leather cover worn smooth by time. On the first page, written in her mother's strong, looping hand, was a single line. The blood we carry is a blessing and a curse. Tala read deep into the night, the firelight flickering across the pages. The journal told of a secret buried for generations. A shame the tribe dared not speak aloud. Centuries ago, the Skinwalker had been one of their own, a healer, a seer of great promise, twisted by ambition and rage. He had not been killed or simply banished, as the elders said. Instead, he had been bound, his soul chained to the bloodline of his descendants, so that he could never fully die, never fully return. Each generation, the bond weakened, and the curse grew restless, whispering across the blood. Tala's blood. Her mother had known. She had tried to shield Tala from it by sending her away, keeping her from the ceremonies, severing her ties to the old ways. But fate and blood could not be denied forever. The realization hollowed Tala out from the inside. She wasn't just a target. She was the prize, the anchor, the last living key to the Skinwalker's true return. Tala closed the journal, her heart pounding with a cold, heavy dread. Outside, the wind stirred again, carrying with it the faintest trace of a voice, one she recognized all too well. "Come home, child. You were always meant to be mine." Tala jolted to her feet, scanning the darkened village. Shapes shifted in the firelight, too fast, too silent. Were they her people, celebrating, or shadows moving under another's will? She spotted movement near the sacred circle, a figure standing too still, too straight, watching her. Chaitan. He smiled when he saw her looking, a slow, patient smile. 100 small memories rushed back. Chaitan urging the council to trust the omens, guiding Tala gently but persistently, always there at the right moment with a word of wisdom, a hand of comfort. What if it hadn't been guidance? What if it had been steering? The exorcism, the possession, the ceremonies, all of it a distraction, not to destroy the tribe, but to weaken it, to isolate her, to bring her here, willing, afraid, desperate, right where he needed her to be. And somewhere deep within her, something old and furious stirred, recognizing the call of its own blood. The first Skinwalker had been reckless, violent, impatient, but the second, the true threat, was patient, cunning, and had been guiding her path from the shadows since the moment she set foot back in Red Mesa. And now, it was almost time. The festival of renewal arrived on a night when the stars themselves seemed to shrink back from the earth. Lanterns flickered uneasily in the heavy air, and the sacred fire in the center of the village burned with an odd, green-tinged flame. Yet the villagers pressed forward, clinging to hope, believing the worst had passed. At Chaitan's urging, the council had decided to hold the ceremony, a rite meant to cleanse the land, seal old wounds, and protect the people from the scars left by the Skinwalkers' evil. It was tradition. It was supposed to heal. Tala stood at the edge of the gathering, her mother's journal clutched tightly in her hands. Every word burned in her mind. She knew this ceremony wasn't what it seemed, knew that something had twisted it from within. Yet what choice did she have? The entire village trusted Chaitan. If she spoke now, she would only sound like a madwoman. The villagers formed a great circle around the sacred fire, chanting the old songs. Tala took her place reluctantly, feeling the ground vibrate under her bare feet. Not with spiritual energy, but with something darker, hungrier. As the ceremony reached its height, Chaitan stepped into the center of the circle. He wore the ceremonial robes of the spirit guide, his face calm, his voice steady as he led the prayer. Tala watched with growing horror as he raised his hands, chanting in a tongue that wasn't quite the old language. Subtle, twisted, wrong. The fire flared high, casting long shadows that seemed to clutch at the villagers. The ground at the center cracked open slightly, a black mist seeping upward. And then she saw it, the real purpose of the ritual. The ceremony wasn't sealing the old wounds, it was unbinding them. It was breaking the chains that had held the ancient skinwalker captive within the bloodline. And she was the key. Pain lanced through Tala's chest. She gasped and stumbled forward as an invisible tether yanked at her spirit, dragging her toward the center of the fire. The villagers, entranced, kept chanting, unaware. Tala fought the pull, her mind racing. She remembered her visions, the wolf's warning, the two roads, the two faces. She remembered the song, the forbidden melody whispered to her in dreams. A desperate choice burned in her veins. Surrender and be consumed, or fight with everything she had, even if it cost her everything. Tala ripped the obsidian bead bracelet from her wrist and crushed it under her heel, releasing the binding spell her mother had hidden there. Ancient energy surged into her, wild and uncontrolled. She lifted her voice and sang, not the chant Chaitan had taught the villagers, but the old song of severance, the one meant to break bonds, not forge them. The fire screamed. The mist recoiled. Chaitan's head snapped around, his eyes blazing gold now, his human mask flickering like flame in a storm. "You do not know what you do, child," he roared, his voice layered with something ancient and monstrous. But Tala sang louder, pouring every shred of her will, her grief, her rage into the song. The sacred circle broke. The villagers stumbled back, dazed and confused, as the black mist writhed and howled in fury. Chaitin, or the thing that wore him, staggered, his form blurring and shifting, caught between shapes. For the first time, she saw him clearly. A being made of twisted bone and black sinew, wrapped in stolen skin. With a final cry, Tala unleashed the full force of the Severance song. The skinwalker shrieked, torn between worlds, and was flung backward into the smoking pit that yawned at the center of the earth. The fire collapsed in on itself, extinguishing into a heavy, smothering darkness. Silence fell. The villagers stood stunned, looking around as if waking from a long nightmare. Tala sank to her knees, every part of her aching, her soul feeling torn at the edges. She had won, but something inside her whispered otherwise. Because though she had broken the ritual, the bond between her blood and the skinwalker was only severed halfway, and the thing she had fought so hard to banish had not been destroyed, merely wounded, merely waiting somewhere beneath the hollow earth. It stirred still, and she could feel it, a tether that would never fully let go. The village lay in uneasy silence in the aftermath of the shattered ceremony. The sacred fire pit was now a smouldering scar in the earth, the once proud circle of stones reduced to rubble. The people spoke in broken whispers, avoiding Tala's eyes, fearful not just of what she had fought, but of what she might have become. Tala wandered beyond the village, drawn by an invisible thread that tugged at her heart. Every step felt heavier, her body caught between two worlds, as if her spirit no longer sat fully within her skin. At the edge of the burial grounds, where the cracked earth met the endless sky, Tala collapsed to her knees. The stars above her blurred into a whirl of cold fire, and the desert wind howled with 1,000 voices, some pleading, some condemning. Then the world shifted. One moment she was kneeling on dry earth. The next, she was standing on a vast plain of shadow and bone, the same place she had glimpsed during her spirit trials. But now it was twisted, poisoned. In front of her stood the skinwalker, no longer hiding behind a stolen face, no longer half-formed. It towered above her, a mass of sinew and ancient malice, its hollow eyes burning with golden light. "You called me here," it rumbled, voice shaking the ground. "You carry my blood, my legacy. You cannot escape what you are." Tala stood trembling, but she did not back down. "I am not yours," she said, her voice raw but firm. "You are a wound. I am the healer." The skinwalker laughed, a sound like bone scraping against bone. "You think you can heal what was born broken? You are mine, child of blood and bone. You will carry me into the living world, or you will be nothing." The desert wind tore at her, pulling her toward him. the tether between them glowing with sickly light. If she allowed it, if she surrendered, he would anchor himself fully to her body, walk the earth again in her skin. But there was another way. The wolf's words came back to her. Both wound, both heal. She could not destroy him without destroying herself. Tala closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of her mother's spirit near, the memory of her people, the land, the songs of her ancestors humming in her blood. She was not just the Skinwalker's descendant. She was also the heir to all the good that came before, the strength, the wisdom, the light. When she opened her eyes, they blazed silver. "Then let's finish this," she whispered. She drew the severance song from deep within her chest, but this time, she changed it. She wove her soul into it, binding her spirit to the old magic, creating a prison not outside her, but within. The Skinwalker roared in fury, realizing too late what she intended. The song tore through the plane of bone and shadow like a storm, pulling Tala and the Skinwalker together, binding them in a prison made of her own will. The desert plain cracked and collapsed, the sky falling in shards of light. In the final moment before the world turned black, she heard his voice, softer now, almost pleading. "You were meant for more." And she answered, "I choose to be more." Tala woke under the pale light of dawn, lying on the cracked earth. Around her, the villagers began to gather, hesitantly at first, then in waves. Sani knelt beside her, his eyes filled with grief and wonder. "Is it over?" he asked. Tala sat up slowly. She could still feel the Skinwalker's presence, coiled deep within her like a dormant storm. She had not destroyed him, but she had contained him. "For now," she said, "I'll hold him." The villagers watched her with a new, uncertain reverence. Tala was no longer just one of them. She had become something different, a bridge between their world and the unseen one, the protector of a balance too fragile to leave untended. The burden was hers now, by blood, by choice. As the sun rose over Red Mesa, Tala stood alone on the ridge, feeling the weight of 1,000 generations in her bones. She was both shield and sword, warden and prisoner, and somewhere deep beneath the earth, the Skinwalker waited, whispering promises she would spend a lifetime refusing. Time moved differently after the binding. Days passed in a blur of muted color, as if the village itself held its breath. The people of Red Mesa repaired what they could, the shattered sacred grounds, the burned gardens, the broken faith. But something fundamental had shifted, an invisible scar left on the land and in their hearts. Tala kept mostly to herself, spending long hours walking the desert trails, or sitting by the dried riverbed, where she and Kiona had once played as children. The village no longer knew how to look at her, their protector, their shield, but also the vessel of the ancient terror they had fought so hard to banish. She didn't blame them. The Skinwalker's presence was a constant ache beneath her ribs, a faint whisper at the edge of every thought. He was weakened, imprisoned inside her spirit, like a caged serpent. But he was still there, waiting for weakness, waiting for the day she might falter. But Tala had made peace with it. One evening, under a sky brushed with violet and gold, the council gathered for a final ceremony. Not one of binding or protection, but of remembrance. They lit a new sacred fire at the heart of the village, smaller than the old one, but burning strong and clear. Ahote spoke first, his voice thin with age, but rich with sorrow and pride. Tonight, we honor what was lost and what was saved. We carry the past with us, not as chains, but as memory. Kiona, still recovering from her possession, approached Tala with a basket of dried sage and river stones. Without speaking, she placed it at Tala's feet and bowed low, a gesture of apology and of gratitude. Tala lifted her gaze to the gathered faces, old friends, wary strangers, curious children, and realized something quietly, deeply. They didn't need her to be whole. They needed her to endure. She knelt by the fire and added her mother's talisman to the flames, the wolf swallowing the snake, watching it blacken and crumble to ash. It was an ending, and it was a beginning. As the flames climbed higher into the night, Tala spoke. "We are more than the shadows that haunt us. We are more than the blood that binds us. We are the sum of our choices, and I choose to protect this place, no matter the cost." A hush fell over the circle. Some wept. Some simply bowed their heads. Above them, the stars blinked slowly to life, distant and eternal. And far beyond their sight, deep beneath the earth, where the old powers slumbered, the Skinwalker stirred, but only faintly, a caged whisperer bound by stronger hands than his own. Tala rose from the firelight and stepped into the open desert, where the cool wind braided through her hair and the scent of sage wrapped around her like a promise. She would walk between two worlds now, not as a prisoner, not as a victim, but as a guardian, flesh and spirit, light and shadow, ashes and rebirth. The whispers would never fully cease. The danger would never truly die. But neither, now, would she. And somewhere on the horizon, where the desert met the stars, a silver wolf watched her with molten gold eyes and smiled. Epilogue. Beneath the still earth, seasons turned over Red Mesa, softening the scars but never erasing them. Crops grew again. Laughter returned to the village, cautious but real. The people learned to live with the memory of what had come before, weaving it into their songs, their prayers, their blood. Tala became a figure of quiet reverence, part guardian, part myth. She roamed the boundary lands, speaking little, listening always, her spirit attuned to shifts too subtle for ordinary senses. But on certain nights, when the wind was still and the moon hung heavy and red, the earth itself seemed to breathe. Faint tremors stirred beneath the ancient stones. Dreams carried old songs twisted wrong, and shadows stretched just a little too long. And in those moments, Tala would lift her face to the stars, her hand instinctively resting over her heart, feeling the faint pulse of the skinwalker stirring deep within her, and she would whisper into the darkness, "Not today." Far below, in forgotten caverns untouched by sun or spirit, something smiled back.